thanks for the National Poetry Series for being super awesome. I'm going to read a little bit from Monograph, which is like very short, very narrow prose, often looking remarkably like fiction. You may notice that I'm only referring to characters by their first initials, which is for both legal and entertainment reasons. And like Sarah, it's just one long thing, so I won't be able to give you any like breaks, or it's only 5 poems until the end, and you have mercy. So I'm just gonna go straight through. Thought back to that first October after moving to the city, both of us temping, broke and in debt, barely able to afford the rent on a basement efficiency next to the elevator. Our sole extravagance, a bonsai tree stiffening on the window. Fairly certain we were doomed as a couple, repeating this to myself every night as I walked home in darkness through the close suburban streets, the smell of the sea infiltrating the fog, utterly ecstatic with rage. When my grandfather tried to tell my dad obliquely that my mother was mentally ill, he had to take him out on the water in a rowboat to do it. There they were safe, or at least equally endangered. He, like other northern fishermen, could not swim. These are the people I come from. R says C has been dredging up a bunch of sexual trauma. This is the second girl he's dated who was raped in the past. Last night, he came home stoned. C was enraged, and when he turned his back on her, she punched him. He just said, "I can't believe you did that," then walked away. She rushed after him, shouting, "Wait, don't you want to know why I hit you?" When my dad was traveling and teaching healing in Europe, he woke in his hotel one morning and discovered that his passport was missing. The room was full of spirit guides, arguing about where he should go next. As soon as he yelled at them, they vanished, and the passport instantly appeared right in front of him on the nightstand. These kinds of ambiguous difficulties are not, as they say, in the literature, but they're what make this real for me. If I took one thing from my father's universe, it's that everyone has an agenda, even when they don't have a body. Annie told me she trained herself to masturbate with highlighters. First 1, then 2, then 3. It was her reward for homework. I cannot imagine she thought that I would be able to resist lingering over this metaphor. How French to make scholarship seem sexy. How American to make the emphasis literal. When I was born, I weighed 8 pounds. 12 months later, I was back down to my birth weight and dying. During this year, my mother wore jeans every day, the same pair of jeans. Clearly, she did not want to be recognized as anything other than a depressed person. There are worse uniforms, I suppose. Compared notes with D. He has sex about 3 times a month, while I only have it twice a month. He was cheerful. Well, it sounds like your marriage is in a lot worse shape than mine. He is thinking of bugging his wife's computer because he suspects she is cheating. She calls him drunk at 3 a.m. to ask him to come and pick her up from his friend's house. He wishes, with a great deal of fervency, that he could confirm his suspicion that she was sexually abused as a child. It's very Eastern. The night Virginia Woolf finally slept over, her lover, Vida Sackville-West, memorialized the event in her diary by simply writing 3 exclamation points. I myself have won 4, which demonstrates that the first thing one wants to do with a great metaphor is to wreck it. The first time I come home with N, her father and sister pick us up at the airport at night in a blizzard. They have already opened a case of beer, and they all drink steadily during the harrowing drive back through the mountains. I say nothing. I just think to myself, okay, so that's how it is. Later, I realize this is not how it is. They were making a point. Return for the second half of Christmas with N's family. Overhear her father gloating to a friend on the phone about his lack of reaction when opening his presents. You should have seen their little faces. So crestfallen. N says he is difficult to shop for. I stare into the pallid eggnog as the plastic cup flexes in my hand. Went out last night with M in a lavender tie and a purple shirt. Felt like a sexual racketeer. Raymond Chandler would have approved. M says he is fighting every night with R, who is triumphantly agoraphobic. They both scream and cry and threaten to flee the apartment. Then they have sex. At first, I was frightened, then jealous, then frightened again. Anne confesses to me that she watched G.I. Joe as a kid and that she wanted to be Scarlet. I myself loved the mute, scarred Snake Eyes. I am dumbfounded. Even as a 10-year-old, I found the show unbelievably hokey. No one ever got killed, and their M16s fired dotted lines of lasers, despite the fact that they were clearly wearing belts of ammunition. At first, I marvel over the irony. I'm a pacifist who's never been in a fight. She's a reformed radical lesbian, yet we like the same campy military cartoon. Then I get sad. This is what you fall in love over. Dreamed that a lot of people had been killed and buried in the sand. Realized that this was Bloody Cove of my childhood, where a bunch of Native Americans were massacred, and where I had daily lessons on the tennis courts every summer. According to my grandfather, this is what a well-bred young man did, along with sailing and ignoring the 20th century. Not terribly surprising that I tend to think of masculinity itself as a type of minor catastrophe. In my dream, my mission was to find and lock the last door to New England in Maine so that we would be safe, discounting the hordes of weird and bony moose. I imagine this Yankee relationship with the land, formal, mythic, feudal, is what drove my grandfather to wear a tie when he pulled up lobster traps in his rowboat. A says her father put a penny in a jar on the dresser every time he and his wife made love. After their first year of marriage, the jar was halfway full. It took him the rest of his life to make it to the top. A terrible argument for and against infinity. My dad shows me his journal entry from the year before I was born. The one where I came to him in a dream and said that I would be a writer, that I would be delivered 2 weeks early, that I would be a C-section, and that there would be no blood. All of which came true, even the blood. The doctor was amazed. I've kept this in so that you know I can't be trusted, right? My mother tries to convince me not to leave N by enlisting the Jehovah's Witnesses with whom she has been flirting. They understand about mysteries, she says, about what draws people together. Well, what I understand, I say, is that they have incorrectly predicted the end of the world 16 times. She gets angry. So you're going to be just like your father, who didn't think we should be a family? Is that what you want? I barely refrain from pointing out that even though he was the one who filed, she chose to get divorced. He wasn't going to leave her. That is, until he discovered that the only thing that was more exciting for her than secretly having sex with a drug dealer who didn't speak any English was refusing to stop when she was caught. It couldn't just be a mistake. It had to be a story. I am supposed to write an invocation for a friend of N's who is getting married. We fight over my draft for hours. It is not, she says, about them, about love. I talk about the Curies distilling 7 tons of pitch blend in order to get 1/10 of a gram of radium. How they lived in poverty in an unheated shack and had to take turns stirring the slag with a heavy iron bar for hours. But they were happy. I leave out the part where Marie dies from having blithely carried radioactive vials around in her coat pocket. She kept test tubes of the stuff in her desk and loved the pretty blue-green light it gave off in the dark. Anne and I are discussing the perfected female body, and whether or not pleasure is inversely proportionate to form. I think of the early Islamic scholars and mystics, the ones who invented the idea of the Awri, namely a woman who is hairless, except for the eyebrows and head, who does not menstruate, urinate, or defecate, and is transparent right down to the marrow of her bones, like red wine in a white glass. N tries to end the discussion by declaring, "I just want to be a Barbie who's capable of orgasm." I laugh, then realize that I'm suddenly very angry, though I'm not sure on whose behalf. I'm sad, so I go alone to the candlelight mass at Christmas. My favorite part is the end, when the sexton brings down the lights, and I'm alone with the feeling of breathing in a dark building with hundreds of people. I think of the secret gospel of Mark, the one with the verses where Lazarus falls in love with Jesus after being raised. He spends the night alone with him, dressed only in a linen cloth, so that Jesus can teach him the mystery of God's domain. I reach out for N's absent hand in the pitch black. We're outside on the lawn at a neighbor's extravagant birthday party with N's family. Her father's irritated that he's not the center of attention, so there's more than the usual amount of maintenance drinking. N wonders aloud where they're hiding the good stuff. Her father snorts, "Don't be a fucking moron. There is no good stuff." N's eyes shine with tears, and she looks away, pretending to stare at the derelict ice sculpture melting into the shrimp. I realize that my fists are rising to my sides, and I stop. My dad discloses that he actually briefly succeeded in dragging my mother to couples counseling. After their time was up, the therapist announced with peculiar intensity, "The men's bathroom is down the hall to the right." As my dad was returning, the therapist slipped out and intercepted him in the corridor. "I shouldn't be doing this," he said. "It's not even professional. But that woman in there, she just wants a house and money, and she wants you to take care of everything." He paused meaningfully. They looked at each other. Generally, men bore me, but I have to admire this moment. We may not be able to approximate an honest emotion, but damned if we can't float an implication. Z helps me look past the long conversation, wherein I will attempt to explain to N that experiencing a crippling orgasm of fury when it comes time to apologize is fatal, romantically speaking. "All you have to do," he says, "is utter these things calmly, look at her out of slitted eyes, and then vanish, like a ninja." I am not comforted. Where will I go? Am I going to be one of those divorced people with an empty loft? Z shakes his head. "Don't be silly. Ninjas don't get furniture." N reveals in couples therapy that she went off birth control 3 months ago, as if she had actually told me that she was no longer taking her pills. She says it with such a lack of emphasis that it takes me a moment. Then the room becomes bright and horribly detailed. After swimming, E and I drive through the calm oaks on either side of the back road. We stop at a gourmet grocery store, set randomly beside a field, buy pomegranates and dark chocolate, and sit down at the edge of the parking lot. Watch the effortless light from the tall grass, the sun going down. E talks about the Masons, theoretical particles, her new love, what they do and don't have to do with each other. I say nothing, which makes me suspect that I'm happy. N would never let me lick or kiss the small serif on her breast where they removed the mask. It was neither benign nor malignant, simply anomalous. I liked it because it made me think of the Japanese art of kintsugi. When a work of ceramic broke, they would inlay the cracks with gold and find it more beautiful afterwards because it existed in time now and had a history.